don't get the analytics.
So you know what they used to always say to me? Why don't you smile more? Why don't you laugh more? And I said, you know what I laugh? When someone tells me a funny joke. I'm not just going to...
Do you get the sense that he cares about any of this?
No,
I don't think he cares about anything.
I don't think he cares about
he cares about horses.
What is patois?
Look it up.
How do you even spell patois?
Yes, I already knew you didn't know that one.
I thought it was patois, P-A-T-O-I-R. I Googled it, and it pulls up Urban Dictionary. A stupid Frenchman who is a Boy Scout and has sex with a moose.
What?
So how do you spell patois?
I know it's stupid. I don't care.
Just like, come on.
And you know why there's pressure on you, pal? You know why there's pressure on you? Because you've never gotten out of the second round.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Ding on the Athletic NBA Show. I'm Dave DuFour here with Mo Dakhil to recap Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And Mo, the Boston Celtics finally decided to show up 116-99. The Boston Celtics take Game 4, and we're going back to Boston. The series is now 3-1. Miami still leads. Mo, the biggest story here, Celtics look like the Celtics that we watched all season.
Yeah, no, this is the Celtics team we've kind of been expecting and waiting for to show up in the conference finals. I felt like they shot the ball incredibly well. They got good playmaking. Their defense was pretty rock solid across the board. Like, for the most part, like, hey, it was nice of them to join us, Dave, for the Eastern Conference Finals. Is really kind of my feeling with that.
Yeah, offense looked a lot better. And, of course, when you go 19 of 45 from the three-point line, that helps quite a bit. But that's sort of how the Boston Celtics are built. They're a three-point shooting team. Obviously, they've struggled to shoot the ball. But in this game, outscored Miami by 33 points from behind the three-point line. Miami only 8 of 32 from three. And that was kind of the story of this game, Mo.
Yeah, no, I mean, Miami struggled from three. I think Miami itself, I think they might have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves, thinking they might be able to just walk through this one. They were sloppy. 15 turnovers. I didn't feel like there was the level of fight that we've seen from them throughout this series. I didn't see that in this game tonight. And I think that was one of those things. And across the board, it's like nobody really kind of stood out. You know, Jimmy Butler had a rough shooting night. Bam was very quiet and was not very aggressive. You know, you have Gabe Vincent got going a little bit, but I just wasn't blown away from these guys in the sense of what we saw from them the first 3 games, where I felt like no matter what, even when they were down in those games, Dave, I was like, oh, they're still going to win this game. This one just kind of felt like it was Boston's to lose at any point.
Yeah, Boston went on a big run in the third, and it just kind of ran away from the Heat, I think. But a guy that did show up, I thought was the best player on the court tonight, Jason Tatum, 14 of 22 from the field, had 34 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, had a couple of blocks. Started out the game a little bit rough, Mo, and, you know, elimination game, he started to get worried, but he turned around.
I mean, it's starting out a little bit rough. He had 4 turnovers in the first half. Finished with 5. The Celtics as a team finished with 10. He had half of their turnovers. And it was all mostly early on. And I think, yeah, you're starting to like panic. You're almost like, oh God, like, is this how they're going to go out in that way? But give him credit. And this is something we saw in the Philly series, right? Like, really game 6, just completely awful, and then got going really down the stretch. Like, he's able to kind of do it. This is the game they need from him. And the stuff I like from him, Dave, was there wasn't as much isolation, pound, I'm going to pull up. There was some of that, but then there were smart plays and plays like he's coming off the screen, the Heat are doubling. He kicks it to Grant Williams, who drills a 3, who played really well tonight as well. I think like this game for the Celtics, like they need to hang their hat on it. Like for them, they need to go like, this is how we play. This is what we need in game 5.
Yeah, it's a huge role player game in a must-win. I mean, absolute must-win, because otherwise your season's over. But game on the road, Al Horford, 3 of 6 from 3. Marcus Smart hit 3 threes. Derek White hits 3 threes. Grant Williams hits 4 threes. I mean, when you get that sort of production, I mean, Boston has to win those games. But that's sort of the secret to their success is Jason Tatum, go nuts, and then we either need to get the supporting cast to show up or Jaylen Brown. And in this one, it was a supporting cast.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing, and this is Joe Mazzulla deserves a lot of credit. He's taken a ton of crap from everybody across the board. People were firing him before this game, Dave, like they're ready to run him out of town. And it's I've been saying, I little bit of a plug. I have an article out that's talking about this isn't all on Joe and the other guys need to show up. Those guys showed up, but he did a great job coaching. He was calling timeouts quickly to stop runs, which is something we haven't seen. There's one possession where he didn't like the way the offense was going for Boston. He calls a timeout.
Jaylen Brown had the ball in the corner.
Yeah, and then he calls the timeout and gets him a bucket. And I think, hey, that was a really well-coached game from Joe Mazzulla, who has been taking a beating across the board over the entire series and really the whole playoffs. I felt like you look at this one, you go, man, this is one of those games they got to be really happy with, and it'll be an easy flight home for them for Game 5 on Thursday.
Yeah, that timeout in particular, Mo, I have it in my notes. I mean, it stood out to me because of Mazzulla, but also because they were doing nothing. They needed a bucket, and they actually came out, ran a play, and got a bucket. And number one, yeah, good for Joe Mazzulla. But number two, man, more NBA coaches should take note of that you're allowed to, if you're going to burn a timeout, you might as well come out and run a play. They didn't isolate. They actually got, a pretty big basket when they needed it. So, maybe Joe Mazzulla has turned a corner here and found some confidence as a coach. I mean, or maybe it was a fluke. We won't know until
it was one game. Over. We'll have to see till we get to Game 5, right? And all that. But listen, I get it. Boston fans are fired up. They're screaming 2004 Red Sox. Here we go. Jaylen Brown was like, "Don't let us win a game." Well, all right, you won a game. Now let's see what you do. I think this is still going to be a pretty interesting Game 5. Miami, they're pretty cutthroat. I feel like this was a game that I didn't feel like they came out with the appropriate attitude to the whole deal.
Yeah, well, as a lifelong Yankees fan, I will tell you that being up 3-0 on a Boston team and inviting A-Rod and Derek Jeter into the building is just flirting with karmic disaster. I mean, you're really playing with the sports gods with that one. Well, let's talk a little bit about Miami and their lack of energy, and in particular, Jimmy Butler. I mean, you mentioned rough shooting night, 9 of 21, played 39 minutes, but, it didn't feel like he was playing with the same level of force that we're used to with Jimmy Butler. Kind of disappeared a little bit down the stretch. Took a longer rest even in the fourth than I expected when the game was still, I thought, within reach. Is this just a matter of, like you said, maybe they weren't quite as mentally engaged for Game 4, or is there something bigger here? Maybe Jimmy's a little bit tired.
Yeah, I think Jimmy's just a little bit gassed. And I think that's perfectly fine in that scenario. And even stealing a little bit of extra rest in the fourth quarter, not a bad deal there for the Heat. I think this is just one of those things where, hey, man, like the playoffs are hard. I know it hasn't looked like it in the conference finals. Right. I know the Nuggets swept the Lakers. I know Miami went up 3-0 and everything was looking easy. People have to just understand the playoffs are freaking hard. They're hard. And I think it takes a while, and it takes a toll on you the further you go and getting the wins and things like that. And I think he just kind of ran out of gas on this one.
Yeah, sweeps are hard too, by the way. That's why we've never had two conference finals end in a sweep in the same season, and that streak continues, unfortunately for those of us who were hoping for some time off. For Miami, when you're going back to Boston Game 5, right? You need to win this. I feel like they need to close this out in 5. They don't want to let this get to 6, because you get to 6 and all of a sudden you've given Boston a puncher's chance to make it a 1-game series. I really feel like they got to come out hard in that Game 5, Mo. What do you want to see them do differently that they didn't do in Game 4?
Well, no, I just think their energy level. Look, they shot the ball poorly. Jimmy didn't play well. Bam was not aggressive. Like, I don't even think it's a really interesting. I don't feel like there was anything strategically that was done. I don't think Boston did anything strategically that was just so amazing that, oh, this is the turning point. This isn't Rui Hachimura guarding Jokic. It's not a and that was a joke for those who may not get it. But I don't feel like this is a massive one. And Dave, even if they lose game 5, I still don't think it's a big deal for the Heat. I mean, it is in the sense of like, okay, a little more attention in that sense, but I still think the situation with where they're at and everything, it wouldn't shock me if they lose game 5. And Boston's a good team. Boston's playing well. If Boston shoots this well from 3, they're probably going to win that game because that's kind of been the difference there. This is one of the few games, though, where Miami allowed them to get a lot of threes off. And I think that will be the attention to detail that Spo will go back to it. But Spo's going to get in his lab, Dave. He's going to find something. He's going to do something tricky and get them going again. I'm not even if they lose game 5, though, I wouldn't panic if I was Miami in that sense.
And, one story to kind of pay attention to, mid fourth quarter, Gabe Vincent goes up to get a rebound and he rolls his own ankle. And it looked kind of nasty. He tried to play through it, went back to the locker room. That's something to watch. Gabe Vincent's super important for this team. Obviously, no Tyler Hero. His ability to stir the drink has gotten a lot of offense generated for them, getting to the basket, attacking. Even Robert Williams in this game, he had another great game. That's something to watch, Mo. I mean, maybe it's a little bit more Kyle Lowry than we've been used to in this series if Gabe Vincent's hampered.
And ultimately, even though Kyle Lowry didn't shoot it all that well, he wasn't that bad when he was on the floor. But listen, Miami can't afford to keep losing guys. And I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Like, it's just like, we can't go down another guard at this point. And I think those are the things that would be concerning. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Miami responds going into game 5. I thought Rob Williams was really good as well in this game. I don't feel like we gave him a lot of pub, and then the numbers, again, don't show those things. But all in all, I think for Boston, like, you got to feel confident. Like, yeah, this is the team. This is who we're supposed to be. This is who is supposed to start the series now. And they played with urgency, I felt like. And we'll see how it carries over. Because the one thing about this Boston team, man, I don't trust them, Dave. We think they found something, and then they just go crap the bed.
They really do. They have the strangest identity. I mean, last year we knew them as this defensive powerhouse that could obviously score, but this year it just feels like it doesn't have the same intensity defensively as they were able to tap into last year. And I don't know if that's Rob Williams being, a little bit lesser than as far as physically or whatever. Maybe it's Al Horford lost a step. I'm not sure, but
no, it's Marcus Smart has not been very good defensively this year, and Jaylen Brown has not been very good defensively this year. We could say it. That's what it was. Right. Like, if we're being honest, those are the guys that let this Boston team down defensively. They had bite last year defensively, and Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year. We can debate that whole award if we want, but he was at least in the running and in that conversation. He wasn't that this year, and injuries, age, whatever. Brown, he wasn't that guy that we expect him defensively in this year in the season. And I'm not, so like, yeah, the defense is going to take a step back when 2 of your main wing perimeter defenders aren't playing up to their level. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why their defense fell off.
Yeah. Well, game 5 is going to be Thursday night. Mo, you're going to be back on the ding. I think it's going to be you and Andrew Schlecht. So if you're watching us on YouTube, join us here. If you're listening to us on the podcast player of your choice, come join us on YouTube. We like to check the comments. And Nandit Singh, in our YouTube comments, he tells us the only way the Celtics lose if it's extremely close and they turn the ball over, that's been a big problem for them, Mo. I mean, again, started out the game, Jason Tatum throwing the ball all over the place, and you and I both thinking the same thing. It's gonna be a long night for Boston. So he's definitely onto something there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's Boston is not good in close games. Those guys, those stars do not show up that often in close games. They've had moments, but they do not always do that.
Yep. And yes, and Nandit Singh points out that the Celtics gave all of us NBA media folks something to do for the rest of the week. And we, of course, appreciate him for that. And I appreciate Mo Dakhil joining me, Dave DuFour, here for the Daily Ding on the Athletic NBA Show.
Ding, ding.